And to start with, I'm using some practice icing, which is basically air dry buttercream that does not have any butter in it. So this does not start with a yellow cast. If you have a buttercream that is yellow, you just have to take that into account. Now I have these paint swatch cards, which are really useful. And especially when I was meeting with clients, I would say, which is the color that you're talking about? Because mauve is a color that could be anything. So this is too pink, but some people think that's mauve. To me, that's a little too pink. So I'm looking at this saying, well, I think that it's a little bit, I think of mauve as being kind of closer to the ones in the middle. So I'm just going to close that out. All right, I'm not even going to look at that. These are a little too gray to me, and I like this one, but it's a little bit not pink enough. So the problem is that the food coloring that you get is usually too pink or too brown, and I want it to be between these two. So this one on the left and this one on the right, I want this color to be somewhere in between. So more like the one on the left, but a little more purple like the one on the right. So those are going to be my reference colors when I start mixing these. And I'm going to start by mixing some pink because I like mauve to be pink. So I'm going to start with the pink as the base and then move toward the purple in this color. All right, so I'm starting with the pink, and this is the mauve food coloring. And like I said, this is too brown for me. I've tried this and it's just a little bit too brown, not a big fan, but I do think it's good for accents. But I'm going to use this soft pink Americolor because I do like this. It's a bright color, but it is going to give me the base of the icing to be that pink that I'm going to start with. So I'm just going to do a drop, and you have to be really careful with this. For starting out, it's okay, but I do have toothpicks over there. I'm going to show you how to use the toothpicks. Now, see, I put this in. This is looking really orange. As I was doing this, I'm like, oh wow, this is really orange, and it looked more orange in real life than it does on here. But you can see that it has a lot of yellow in there, and it just needs to be adjusted. So now I'm going to add a little bit of mauve to try to even that out and take it down from that orange a little bit because it does need adjusting for sure. So I'm going to try to mix this in. I'm only using a little bit because you need to go really slow with these food colorings. You just don't know. Another way to do it would be to mix up some small amounts of really bright icing and then use that to add into your icing because you have a little bit more control when you can see what the color is that you're adding in. But if you're just adding in the icing or the gel like this, sometimes you just add too much or too little. And I had that first part, I just didn't put enough in, not enough came out. But you can see that this is really taking the color down a little bit and it's calming it down because this mauve food coloring has a lot of brown in it. And like I said, I've tested this before, and the Americolor mauve it's not pink enough for me. When I'm making mauve icing, I want it to be pink, but I don't want it to be super pink and I don't want it to be brown for sure. So let's test it with this. I don't, you see, it's way off of that. It's getting closer to this. Okay, so let's use that as the reference from at this point. I do want it to be a little bit more purple, but this is pretty close at this point. It's too light, but it's pretty close. I want it to be a little more grayed out because I think that mauve does have a lot of pastel tones to it, and it's just something that you need to take into account. So to get that pastel, let's use some green. And I'm just going to use a tiny bit of green. It's not bright, so I'm using moss, but I am going to use a toothpick for this. And when you're using a toothpick, it gives you the ability to add just a tiny bit as opposed to dropping it out of the dropper and not quite knowing how much is going to come out. You can control the color amount that you're putting in a little bit better. And the only thing to remember is to never take the toothpick that has icing on it and stick it back in your food coloring because that can contaminate your food coloring and you don't want to do that. So always use a clean toothpick. You can also use those little chicken skewers, like you get to truss up a chicken or a turkey, and you can clean those. So those are metal, you can clean them. Those work just fine for transferring food coloring, but the toothpick method is a really good way to control the amount of color. And you can see just by putting that green in there that this is starting to look more pastel. Now it's really looking brown. Okay, so now it's muted out. It's still pink, but it's very pastel. It's more like a blush than the pink that it started with for sure. It started very bright, but it's still too light. So now I'm going to get some maroon, which is basically red and brown. And you can do this if you don't have maroon, use red, use brown. It'll work the same way. And I think that I did end up putting 2 rounds of this in there, 2 drops. But I was going to do the toothpick method, but I was like, nah, this really needs to get darker. So I started with the 1 drop, mix that up, and then I think I decided to put more in that. I'm not sure if I have that in here. But this is how you have to mix colors sometimes. And the one thing that I would say is that if you're trying to match a color that a bride gave you or that a client gave you, get a physical sample of that color. Like I have this paint swatches, okay, and see, now we're getting really close to this. So this is how you can match the colors. The icing color is going to change too, so mix this up ahead of time because sometimes it will change overnight and then you're going to need to adjust it a little bit more. But you definitely want a physical example of the color because people don't describe things right. They don't remember what the colors are. And never, never, never have someone send you a link to any kind of color online because every computer looks different. The screens showed things differently. You are not going to be able to match things using a computer. Get a physical example of the color because that's the only way that you're going to know for sure that you're matching it. And I can tell you some stories. Let me tell you about matching colors. Also, make sure that you're making enough of the color because if you have to go back and try to do this again, it's going to be really hard. So you might want to write down like what colors are you using, how much are you using. Now I'm going to add some violet to this because it's at the color. See, it's pretty close to that color, but I do want it to be a little more purple. And again, I'm going to use the toothpick because I just want a tiny bit. I want to test this out and see if this is what is going to work. So that's why I took the icing out of the main pot. I'm just going to, take this because I do like that color, but to me, mauve is a little more purple than that. So this, I think, is going to push it over the edge. I thought, violet would be a good one. I didn't want it to be too bright. And sure enough, once I mix this up, this is definitely, if somebody said to me, I want mauve flowers, and they did not give me a color sample, I would be fine with using this color. And once I show you the two right next to each other, you see how the one on the left, you can definitely see a difference. That violet has really toned it down, made it a lot more blue purple as opposed to that orangey kind of blush pink on the other side. Make sure that you're using the toothpicks, and I'll go through these colors again. It was soft pink, mauve, moss, maroon, and violet. So those are the colors that went into this, just a little bit at a time, adjusting as you go. And your customer might not want this mauve. They might want something that's a lot pinker. So just make sure that you get that sample from them. It is critical. It's critical to get a sample if you're matching something and trying to match it exactly. It's very important because you want to make sure that you get it right.